Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Books of the Month. I am your host, EJ, and today I am honored to introduce to you probably one of the most influential authors I've had the opportunity of getting to meet for myself. She is not only an author of an amazing book entitled What About Me, but she's also been a Chief Warrant Officer, veteran of the Gulf War, motivational speaker, and just an overall amazing woman of God. Please help me in welcoming today Dr. Delphine Greathouse. Hi, Dr. Greathouse. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
It's my pleasure.
We have so much ground to cover. And just in the interview that we had done before we got started, there was so much to learn about you. And so I want to get into a little bit more about you and your background. But I kind of wanted to start out with some experience that you've had. Now, you've been in the military for how long?
I was in the military for 20 years.
For 20 years, wow.
I went in when I was 17 and I retired when I was 37.
Okay.
About to be 38.
Wow.
I had a myriad of assignments. I spent 3 tours in Germany.
Okay.
And interesting was, instead of going to school, when I was younger, my mom said, listen, when you get in the 9th grade, I need to know what you're going to do with the rest of your life. You have to sit down and tell me and your dad. And she did that with me and my 3 brothers.
Look at that.
So when it was my turn, I finished up 8th grade, and I was going into 9th grade, and I said, I'm going to go in the military.
Oh, wow, okay. Do you come from a military background?
No.
You just decided that's what you were going to do?
I used to play the Commodores.
Okay.
Every day when I came home from school, and I used to play Zoom. I liked to fly far away. And I could literally see myself in another country. And so my desire was to go someplace where I could go to school, make money, and travel.
Look at that. Okay, so where most people, I think, just getting into high school are focusing on their friends and, social media and really into TV, your parents were really setting you up for your future at that point in time.
Yes,
so
yes.
Did you feel like that was, kind of unusual for you as opposed to your friends where here they were kind of just hanging out and living life?
No, because most of my friends would come to my house to talk to my parents.
Is that right?
Yes. Because they realized it was something about my life and my brothers that they weren't getting at home. So everybody would like to come to our house and hang out.
Okay.
And my parents gave us sage advice. I mean, it was so seasoned because my mother was very wise.
Okay.
And I was telling someone recently, I don't know what prompted me, except for discernment is all I could think of, was seeing my mother in wisdom. And so I began to pray.
Oh, wow, okay.
When I was young, I would pray for wisdom.
Look at that. Was this something that you saw portrayed in your family? Your mother was praying for wisdom and you thought maybe this is something I should do? You felt led to do that?
Just her actions.
Okay.
And my grandmother. They were wise women. I mean, I tell folks, my mom was the smartest woman I've ever met in my life. Wow. And she graduated right out of high school. Married my dad and started having children. So she grew up with her children.
Okay, okay.
And so I just thought that was incredible. Yes, I saw weaknesses because I didn't know what to call it at that time, but she was immature. But she would do things with a steady hand all the time.
Okay, so growing up in the household now, here you've kind of grown up along with your mom where she was kind of making those certain mistakes here and there, but somewhere along the lines you learned to pray. And you learned to pray for the things that you felt were the right things to pray for wisdom. So do you feel like that played a part in your life as you got older and then you entered the military?
I think so, but I felt led.
You did? Okay.
I felt led to go in the military. I had taken my SATs. I got accepted to Georgia State. One of my friends was supposed to go to Spelman, and the other one was going to Morris Brown.
Okay.
But then I said at the end, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going in the Army.
Wow. Okay. So you said you felt led to enter the Army, and you said you were at 17 years of age at this time.
I actually joined at 16.
At 16.
And my dad refused to sign because I was going in the reserve first to see if I would like it.
I see.
And so I was going to reserve meetings, but my dad had to sign for me to come active duty, and he refused. And so my mom, I guess she took him in the room and said, look, she has a right to choose to be whoever she wants to be.
Okay.
And he came out of the room, signed the papers, but I still want you to go to school.
Yeah.
I said, I promise I'm going to school.
Okay.
But I really believe in the divine order that God created me. I was set up from the beginning.
I see. Okay.
Because God knew that 2 years ago it would be necessary for me to have went through 20 years in the military.
Wow. Okay. Now tell me, what is that like for you, having that background? What was that experience as you were going through it?
One thing about the military is, I often say, it's the greatest institution for growing up,
Okay.
to finding out how strong or how weak you are. But it's an institution that specializes in competencies.
Okay.
So most military people think along the same line. They like order,
Okay.
discipline. What's the rule? What's the criteria? Let's follow that.
Okay.
Until somebody comes up with a better rule, then this is the rule we're going to follow.
Okay.
So it went along with the teachings that I got at home.
I see. Okay, so this was something you were used to structure growing up.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
So, okay, so when you joined the reserve, for you, this was something that you've already become accustomed to. And it obviously played a very big part in your life as well.
Absolutely. I took a class once on leadership, and the lady says, how long have you been leading? And so I picked up, because I had my first staff at 18 years old. I had 5 people working under me, and I was clueless.
Yeah.
But it was something in me. I didn't know what we were doing, what the work process was, but innately, something in me knew how to lead them.
Look at that. Okay.
And so all of that was part of the developmental process. I believe in strong character.
Right.
And so there are tests, avenues, roads, paths that we have to follow to build character, not just our human character, but our spiritual character as well.
Okay. Now, having gone through that as well, for you, I know that there were some experiences even while you were going through that I think you entered into the military and you were kind of trying to get a sense of self. And so you gained this structure throughout, but then you started kind of going through some personal things as well while you were in the military.
Yes.
Some of them had even laid claim to your personal health.
Exactly. Actually, I had spent time and I had traveled all over.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. I loved the military. I became a warrant officer. I started out as a private.
Okay.
And then I went through the ranks, and when I applied to become a sergeant first class, that's a senior NCO, I decided to switch over because it was better for me and what my plans were for the future, because my husband and I had gotten a divorce, and so I was a single mother.
I see. Okay.
And so I was thinking towards, well, when I retire, I looked at this pay, and I looked at I was like, no, this is better suited for what I want to do in the future.
Okay.
And so when I was in Alabama working as an instructor rider. I was training helicopter pilots and teaching warrant officer recruits.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I went to the doctor one day and I got diagnosed with something that 1 out of every, 100,000 people get diagnosed with.
Wow.
Yes.
Look at that. Okay.
And I went for a routine exam, and so when I go back, the doctor calls me back and says, I want you to sit down, and then she begins to tell me that I had polycystic kidney and liver disease.
Oh, wow.
And so I say, okay, give me a pill.
Yeah.
I'll get out
The
of your
typical
office.
response.
And she says, it's not that easy. There is no cure. The best prognosis you have is you will lose your renal functions at the age of 72. So our job now, at that time I was 35.
Yeah.
So what we want to do now is preserve your kidney functions.
Look at that. Wow. Okay.
So okay, being optimistic, I went and did all the research so I knew what this was. And then they sent me to a dietitian, so they curbed my diet from protein because protein kills the kidneys when the kidneys are sick. And so then I went on this 17-year journey. 17-year journey. And in the process, my abdomen, now mind you, I'm used to running 5 miles 3 days a week, doing push-ups, sit-ups. I'm in the rigors of being the soldier. Then my stomach started getting protruding. Then I couldn't do sit-ups. So I go to the doctor. Okay, that's to be expected, but it keeps coming.
Yeah.
And so 2 years after I was diagnosed, the military has what's called profiles, limitations on what you can do. Okay. And I believe if I couldn't be 100% and give 100% to what I believed in, then I couldn't do it anymore.
Okay.
So I retired. And at that time, I think my abdomen maybe was like here.
And that couldn't have been easy for you because this was something that you clearly loved. And this was your life. And here you were having now to retire from something that you just were in love with for something that you couldn't even help.
And I could have spent another 15 years because I was a warrant officer. Yeah. Instead of doing 20, I could have done 30. But like I said, it was a passion, a great love. You know, I had grown up in this institution. I had spent more time in this place than I had in my mother's home.
Yeah, wow.
So it allowed me, no pun intended, to be all I could be at that time.
Right, okay. And so this was around the same time that you were divorcing your husband?
No, we divorced early.
Early on?
My daughter was like 2.
Okay, okay.
And she, at this time, is in high school when I retired.
Okay, okay.
Because I called the Pentagon and I said, where do I go next? And they said, Japan. And I said, no, I didn't want my daughter trying to get into college from Japan.
Okay, okay.
And so it acted also as a catalyst to allow me to go ahead and retire.
Okay. Okay, so now you've received word at this point that you are dealing with a disease that has no cure.
Exactly.
So you're starting out the gate with very limited alternatives at this point other than just preserving what God has given you.
Right.
And trying to find a way to make this work. And now having to retire from a lifestyle that you had grown so accustomed to over the years.
And something so incredible, they said you can only get it from a parent, one of your parents. It's a 50-50 chance.
Okay.
My mother didn't have it. And so my siblings could have had it. It's a 50-50 chance. Well, the lot fell on me.
Yeah.
But interesting was when I went to tell my mom and she kept seeing the progress, you know what she said? Ask your doctors if I can give you a kidney.
Wow. I want to say this. There is so much to this, and I really actually want to even get into the book as well. And what we're going to do, even for the viewing audience at home, is I want to put a pin in this because this gets more and more interesting. We definitely have a lot of ground to cover. Is we're going to actually get into the book, What About Me, by Dr. Greathouse, where it discusses even more of the testimony, things that she's gone through, personal trials and tribulations, not just with herself, but even with her family. So if you'll stay tuned, we'll be right back with Dr. Greathouse and more about What About Me when we return. Welcome back to Books of the Month. I'm your host, EJ, and we're here with author Dr. Greathouse. Now, we had a chance to get into a little bit about some background. Dr. Greathouse has a military background, and I know when we talked, you mentioned to me that in the very beginning, there was some normalcy. Everything seemed very kind of normal to you. Everything was very familiar. And you actually wound up getting into the military about 16 years of age. And that's when things started to make a change. You mentioned as well that even the state of your health now was starting to kind of fall apart. And you were kind of wondering what was going on at that point in time in your life. And so now where we are, we're actually about to discuss What About Me, this legendary, amazing book that Dr. Greathouse has taken the time to write about her own testimony of what it took for her to get where she was to where you are now. And we start out the book, you mentioned to us about purpose. So talk to me a little bit about what you feel that your purpose is in this life where God led you, why did you open up the book with purpose?
Because I believe the entire experience, from my birth until this present moment was all designed in the creative mind of God.
Okay.
And so God doesn't create anything outside of purpose.
Yeah.
He first thinks of the purpose he wants to fulfill in the earth. And then he creates the vessel that will make that come into fruition in the earth.
Okay.
And so for me in my life, just like a myriad of people in society, they go through and they pick up pieces of things that interest them for their identity.
Okay.
But the majority of people are role playing. Even I was role playing because I didn't know who I was truly. I didn't understand that I had all these values. I didn't understand those things.
Okay.
I didn't understand if you go to 2 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, and you look at the 19th verse and you get to the 20th verse, and it says, in a great house. Isn't that odd? As many times I read the Bible.
Yeah.
In a great house, there are many vessels, silver, gold, wood, and earth. Some to honor and some to dishonor. And if a man be purged of these things, he shall be a vessel of honor and meet for the master's use. And so even me marrying a great house and purposely keeping the last name Greathouse so my daughter would know her identity.
Okay.
You see? But isn't it amazing when God takes certain people's lives and he designate that their lives going to represent so much in the kingdom, he changes their names? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And so, but all of that had to come with the revelation from the Holy Spirit speaking to me internally from a child until a certain point.
Right.
And for me to realize it's not all rolling around in my head. So when he says at the end, when I got to the end and I told him how people come up to me now and say, you're a miracle. And they're so fascinated with what has happened. And it's like there's a gravitational pull. And one day I sat down and I said to the Holy Spirit, well, what is this?
Yeah.
And he said, purpose, daughter. Purpose.
I love the fact that I feel like as I was reading the book, I felt as though we got the luxury of seeing the end or reading a little bit about the end, and then you took us through what you had been through. And so from where we left off, you had just found out now that here you were plagued with this disease that had no cure. So give us some insight about what that experience was like for you around that point in time. You were just now to consider retiring from the military, something that you love.
Right, but I never got depressed or anything. Because in purpose, somewhere along the way you have to figure out your value and your worth.
Yeah.
And that is significant. Even if you don't know what your value and worth is to the kingdom of God, at least know what your value and worth is in the earth. What do you have to offer? What are you giving to the earth?
Okay.
And so I said, okay, this is the hand that I've been dealt. I have to play it the best way I can. Okay? So I started pursuing God. I became a God chaser. I always knew that there was more to God than I was hearing or seeing. I just didn't understand it. But it wasn't until something tragic happened. And I looked around for advice and consolation, and no one could help me. And I remember I could barely walk because the grief was so great. And I mean, because my mind said keep going.
Yeah.
But the physical part was grieving so it caused pain. I was breathing like, because the grief was so great. But I remember when I went down to prayer, and God said, stand up. I'm not going to carry you. You have to walk it.
Okay.
Because at the end, you'll be able to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And so your purpose, whatever you go through, it's not for you as much as it is to lay the path for somebody else.
And to me, that is a really remarkable revelation, that you've known that God is capable of these things. He's very capable. If he can create these things, obviously he's able to deliver you from it.
Exactly.
So this wasn't a question in your mind, and it sounded to me at this point in time that your faith was so deeply rooted in him, even as you were chasing God and saying to yourself, I know that there's more to him than what I'm hearing. There's got to be more to him, and I know that there is. And I think that is an incredible statement of where you were, even where you are now.
But I want to say this to you. The difference in where I was and where I am now is I found out that we are not perfect.
Right.
But we can have a perfect pursuit. We can perfectly pursue God and put all the external things behind. Because the true us is internal, not external.
Right.
Because the greater part of us is him. And when we come to know that, when the creature realizes the creator has deemed you worthy and you have value. You know what God calls me? Daughter of destiny. And I remember when I was laying in my hospital bed and I was on morphine, a morphine drip every seven minutes. And he came in the room, the Holy Spirit came in the room, and for a split second, I was not under the influence of the morphine. And he said to me, do you remember what I called you? And I said, yes, I remember. And he made me say it. He said, what did I call you? And I said, you called me daughter of destiny. And he said, and that is who you are.
Wow.
You have a purpose. I have a plan. I'm going to bring you to this place. And in the meantime, while you're traveling, I'm going to use you to bless my people.
Yeah.
Because I can trust you. You'll tell them. You will tell them that I'm a healer. You will tell them that I'm a redeemer. You will tell them I can resurrect anything dead. When the doctor said, you're going to die, I said, live.
Yeah. Well, what is that feeling like for you, knowing that the creator of everything trusts you with his word? How does that make you feel?
I think it's an incredible honor, really, to be used by God and that he has developed me and used the Holy Spirit to develop me, that he can say, I trust you.
Yeah.
And because I lean on him, I listen for him, I don't move without consulting him.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You see? And so I don't do those things without trusting him. And it's maturity.
Yeah.
And when everybody decides they want to become mature in the Lord, they'll have a perfect pursuit.
Yeah.
And when they find him, he's going to have a requirement.
Okay.
He always gives a condition before he gives the provision.
Look at that. Now, I know in the book, I know there was a substantial portion that was dedicated to the condition that you had been dealing with. And not even so much the beforehand, but even the aftermath as you were going through. I mean, even in the book, I mean, you took us through in which you've even provided pictures of what you had gone through as well, which I found to be very unique. And I think in this instance, it's very necessary, because it's one thing to hear the story, it's another to be able to attach an image to it and say, this is something that God brought her through. God delivered her through this. And so I'm grateful that you thought to even be able to include that in your work as well, because it just adds to that testimony. And
Absolutely.
so I'm glad you're able to do that. There are some other things that happened in your life, I think around the same time frame. I know that you lost your mother.
Yes. My mother was murdered.
Yes.
And my mother was my rock in the natural.
Yeah.
And it came by surprise. The neighbor, we found out later, the neighbor went in to rob her, and he beat and strangled her to death.
Okay.
And that took some time, you know. That's why when you read in the book, you'll see I went through broken.
Yeah.
And then right after coming out of brokenness, I had to go into the wilderness.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned that, and that was actually something I kind of wanted to touch on as well, something that inspired me when I read it. And we talked about this the beginning of chapter 6, which states, brokenness is not a permanent state of being, it is a place of transition, a portal designed to move us from one place in destiny to a more perfect state in the mind of God. And I'm really glad that you shared that revelation, because I think oftentimes, even with our viewing audience, is we get into a place of brokenness, and that's where we are. That's what we say. We, for some reason or another, we resonate with that, and we say, well, this is it. This is where we are, so this must be it. But you mentioned some other phases. But
it's because it's the intent of the Father. When you get into the brokenness, in brokenness you discover healing.
Yeah.
You discover forgiveness. You discover redemption.
Yeah.
In brokenness. You see, those are byproducts of being broken. Those are the things that you discover. But then some people end up having to go through the wilderness.
Yeah.
And the wilderness, and a lot of people think they're the same, but neither one was meant for you to ever stay in and take up home and residence.
Okay.
Okay? Both are a passing through portal. Okay, and it's based on how quickly you acquiesce to what the Father is telling you need to do. All right, but in the wilderness, what you discover in the wilderness is you start to identify with who you are.
Okay, you mentioned a sense of reflection as well in the wilderness. As a person progresses through this, and you have gone through so much in this life, for a life that started very familiar and very normal, you've gone through. And so I want to know, what is it that you want the readers of your testimony, what God has taken you through, what do you want them to gain? What is that underlying message that you want to send to your readers?
I believe that everyone should be aware that God, first of all, is real.
He's real. Yes, he is.
And he has a plan. And even though things happen in our lives, there is nothing, absolutely, whether your mother was murdered, whether you went through a debilitating disease, whether your friends turned their backs on you, nothing that happens to you, he can fix those things.
He can.
It's not like there are impossibilities to God. You see, all things are possible. And what we have to do is turn back to him.
Okay.
And so what the book represents, and the reason why I put the pictures in there, is so people could say, wait a minute, for those who are in a worse state than I was.
Look at that.
Or for some that think their state is as grand as the things that God has brought me through. There is hope.
There is hope. And
there is hope.
For the readers, for our viewing audience, where is it that they can get this book?
That book is at any bookstore where you purchase books, but Amazon has it.
Okay.
Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, Target.com,
Yeah.
Walmart.com. Any bookstore you go to, you can, if they don't have it, just tell them to order the book and you can get it. And always they can find the book at DeeGreatHouseMinistries.com.
Okay.
And typically, what I've been doing, if they order from the ministry site, I autograph the book for them. And it's amazing because God always gives me a word, a personal word, before I put that book, or the staff puts the book in a box.
And you've heard it here first. I want to thank you, Dr. Greathouse, for making your way here on to Books of the Month. You've really blessed me, as well as our viewing audience. If you get the time, please pick up this book, What About Me? It is absolutely amazing, a great testimony to what God has sent her through. And thank you so much for being as yielding as you've been and so obedient to God. Thank you so much for joining us here at Books of the Month. Go pick up What About Me when you get some time. Thank you again, and you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you very soon here at Books of the Month.